Hey, how's it going everybody? It's your boy Meteor Kaiser here, back again with another challenge run. Today we are finally jumping into Fire Emblem 17, also known as Fire Emblem Engage. I have played this game a few times, but I haven't done a run yet, which is very surprising. I guess it just couldn't really find anything I was terribly interested in until now. So we're going to be attempting to do a Alear solo run on Maddening difficulty. So this is probably going to be one of the harder runs that I've done on my channel, considering I really don't do much Maddening, and I honestly should do more Maddening because there's fun in suffering. But anyway, so there's not a terrible amount of rules here, using Alear, Maddening difficulty. Everything else is fair game. I'm allowing the use of DLC as needed, so I'll try not to use it if I don't need it, but we'll see what happens later on in the run. And this also includes having access to those stat boosting items that you get on chapter 5, and so on and so forth. Not too complicated of a run idea. Pretty much everything is fair game. I can swap classes as much as I want to. I can use emblems as much as I want to. I can boost their stats using bond fragments. You name it. Whatever I need to do, I can do, but just using Alear. Now, there'll be a little bit of a discrepancy for the first few chapters, but I'll get to that when I actually get there. So we can skip the prologue because it's pretty go to point A, hit the button, go to point B, hit the button, win. So we'll go on to chapter 1, Awake at Last. So immediately as we start this chapter, we have Vander and Alear, our two first units, and I unequip Vander, hide him in the corner, and I put Alear on the forest tile kind of near-ish the center, and that's really not too bad. I also give whatever vulneraries I can over, because I'll just basically be attacking when I can, healing up when I can, just staying on that plus 30 avoid tile. And that's pretty much the chapter. It's not too bad. I go up and I attempt to save Flam and Clan, and I do. So we move on to chapter 2, Queen Lumera. This one's a little bit more harder. I have a couple of resets here because of the archers. Now I'll explain why I had such a problem with this chapter. It's mainly due to Lumera. The archers were annoying, but Lumera was the biggest pain in the butt. The first time I had to reset because I completely got caught off guard. I did not realize her range was so insane. So I just got in an unlucky position, and to be honest, she's really scary. Like, normally I think you're supposed to beat this with just a combined use of Vander and all of them. However, I get kind of lucky-ish. I set Alear on a forest tile and just let Lumera attack enemy phase and then heal on player phase and just slowly get her within range of getting the Lodestar Rush off, because now we have our access to Marth. We are able to use Lodestar Rush and have access to his stats, which is pretty nice. But I'll go more into the emblems later. I mean, most of you already know all about the emblems, so it's just a question of what pertains to this run. Next, we move on to chapter 3, Hostilities. Alright, so this is going to be one of the two chapters where it's just not gonna work, Chief. Alright, I'll explain some reasons. So there's two huge issues here in both this chapter and chapter 4. The first one here in this chapter is the Pegasus Knights. The Pegasus Knights have lances, and as the weapon triangle is back in this game, it's going to make my life a lot harder to be able to beat lances because I'm a sword user, and also this game has a break mechanic, and if you don't know what break does, break essentially, if an enemy with weapon triangle advantage attacks you, it will break your item and you can't use your weapon for the rest of the turn. So let's say first enemy attacks me and breaks me, right? That means I don't get access to the stats of the weapon and I cannot retaliate for the rest of the turn, meaning it's going to be a lot harder for me to live in the long run. So that is just one of the two issues. The second issue is the boss in this. Boss Abeam, I'm assuming it's Abeam. She is a knight with a solid 14 defense, and Alear currently has a physical attack, so physical attack doesn't even mean her strength stats. Physical attack is her strength stat plus the damage of the sword that I have. So no matter what I do, Alear will do 0 damage because 14 against 14 equals 0, making this nearly impossible to beat. I think if I use Lodestar Rush or Rapier, I do like 3 damage, but even then, I can't sustain that considering a bind does like a solid amount of damage to me. So I try a few times and I cannot get a successful run. Ergo, I deem this as an impossible challenge from this early chapter. So if we want to answer the question, can I beat it with just Alear? That's technically no, but you know, we cheat a little here, you know. So I use the aid of the guys that I get this chapter to help clear the chapter. Similar problem happens in chapter 4 at Land and Bloom. So there are some forts on this chapter that restore HP, which is very helpful. You know, they give you extra void, they heal 10 HP per turn, which is good. However, if the enemies are just going to do more than 10 damage a turn, it's gonna build up. And right now, Alear has not had any outside influences. We have access to the Somnio at this point. However, we don't have access to many of its facilities, and we don't get those DLC items yet. So she'll die a lot unless I get really, and I mean really lucky. So that does actually happen here though. I do get super lucky, and my strategy here was to just equip Sigurd. So I rush for the fort tile, and then I just sit there, heal up, slowly dealing with enemies, try and override as many as I can. But that's not even the biggest problem in this chapter. The problem is actually the boss. Okay, so we have Rodine, who is yet again another knight. This time it's a little bit harder. Yeah, he has 20 defense on Maddening. And Alear is only rocking that 16 physical attack, so it's not just harder than Emblem, it is impossible. There is a way, and I believe after I did this run, I watched like a YouTube video on some guy that did this run as well. I don't know what the hell he did. I think he had some like DLC items from Fire Emblem Heroes, which I don't have on my game, so I was like, okay, for me, this is going to be impossible. So, unfortunately, same thing on this chapter. So, if we want to consider this the beginning of the run, I think that's fairer. It makes more sense, kind of skipping the prologue chapters. I mean, there's some games where I've done that as well, so, you know, live and learn. But anyway, we move on to chapter 5, Retaking the Castle. Now, this is the point where I get that access to those DLC items. So it's a stat boosting item for every category. So from Seraph Robe to boots and everything in between. So this is going to give me a slight bit of an edge, which is going to be nice because I'm going to need Alear as a terrible lord. Not the worst lord in existence, but definitely one of the weaker ones. At least with her, I can kind of make her into my own unit by changing her class whenever I want to, but still cannot hold a candle to like the likes of Byleth, Robin, Corrin, any of those other ones that you can change their classes. Alright, so chapter 5, I attempt to rush the pillars to gain extra void because they're going to be pretty nice throughout this entire run, is going to those pillars, but it turns out that was a pitfall. So the problem with that was I got hit by too many enemies flanking me from the left side. There's like a big group of enemies that'll come, and the biggest problem right now is going to be archers and mages. Archers and mages have a lot of accuracy, and that's the problem. Is I'm not very tanky physically, but the build I'm going to try to go for in this run is dodge tank. With Marth, I get his emblem rank up to 10. And I give Alear some abilities from him. I give Avoid plus 15, and I believe the other one is called Sword Prowess 2. Don't fact check me on that one. I'm too lazy to look it up. That one basically gives you more Avoid, but less crit if you have a sword equipped. So I get like at least, I think it's around 25 Avoid, which is definitely gonna help. That means I get hit 25% less of the time, well, within reason. Because there's going to be times where you can get over 100 avoid and enemies can have over 100 hit. So, but, you know, semantics. So anyway, I digress. So after resetting a couple of times, I instead decide, hey, I'm just going to go forward and attack the enemies there. Then I'm going to deal with that little unit and come back to those pillars. Dealing with less enemies at a time is going to be really nice. And, you know, that's what I do. It's a lot better. Another annoying enemy to have to deal with on these early chapters are going to be knights, because knights have a lot of defense and I don't have a lot of attack yet. So the rapier is going to come in clutch here, giving me that extra damage against armored units that I need. So for the most part, unless I absolutely need the items that the thieves steal, I will be ignoring most chests if they put me in harm's way like they did this chapter. Rushing towards that thief would have just made my life harder. So I was just like, no, I'm going to stay back, I'm going to play it slow, and I can get away with not needing the chest item. Like, early chest items aren't that important. It's the ones that you get like way towards the end of the game that matter more, like your boots, your stat increasing item basically. You know, you can't just buy later on. After I cleared those initial enemies, I, instead of going around to the left, I head just straight up through the front gate so I could deal with the boss room enemies. And then I eventually just end up lodestarring Naluche and force him to one range me. So Neluche is the first instance here of the revival stones, which is a mechanic in this game. We kind of had that a bit in Three Houses, but this is basically just the enemies have 2 health bars. You have to clear one and then they get their HP restored and they have 1 less health bar. It's annoying because, you know, you can't just go in, swoop in, one round an enemy and then just win. But even though he has all this extra health, he's like a complete joke, honestly. This guy is not too bad. He has a bit of strength, but he has like no accuracy. He tends to hit from 2 range with a hand axe. However, if I force him into a position to 1 range me, he's kind of easy to deal with. So yeah, the goal for this game is to make Alear into a dodge tank, just because I don't think I have any other options available to me. Alear's strength defense stats aren't that great, so as long as I bulk up her HP and I give her some nice avoid, I should be able to, you know, hopefully survive, but we'll see. Anyway, we move on to chapter 6, the Stolen Ring. So by this point, Alear is level 11 with 121 base avoid, so that's pretty poggers. That basically means nothing's gonna hit me, hopefully. You know, you still have some options. That's why the worst enemies so far, and kind of going forward as well, are gonna be archers and mages. And this is for 2 reasons. One, this is due to my lack of 2 range, and the fact that they are more accurate in general, so they're gonna have some chance to do damage. And I don't have much resistance. I have a lot less resistance than I do defense. So if a mage hits me, that's gonna knock out between 1/3 to 1/2 of my HP. Just in general, so that's not that fun. I mean, it's such a low chance to hit, like 10-15%, but still, you're gonna eventually get hit. Thankfully, we do have our divine pulses, and I can RNG spam if I need to, but I'd rather save the pulses for if I fuck up or if something bad happens during that chapter. Alright, next thing I want to mention is Mercurius, the sword that you get for rank 10 bond with Marth. Now this will give you extra experience gain, which is really great in the early chapters. Not terribly great from my situation, just because these enemies are giving me like nothing for experience. But still, I will take what I can get, and I won't put up a fuss or something. I don't know. But this chapter is a complete and utter breeze. I leave Yunaka in the back, and I just send Alear slowly through the chapter. It's a fog of war with the lanterns being snuffed out. This is going to be a theme later on as well. Really not that bad. I just slowly go through it, and I'm able to deal with pretty much everyone. Next up, I just do the 2 quick paralogs. Just not going to show too much of them, just quick bit of extra XP. I don't save any of the villagers in the first one, and I think I save Anna in the second one. So I don't get the second seal from the first map, but I get the master seal from the second map, which will be helpful going in because I'm not going to need a second seal quite yet. But anyway, we move on to chapter 7, Dark Emblem. So at the very beginning here, I changed my class because I hit level 15, so I'm like, yeah, it's probably about time to promote. So I get a little bit of a nice stat boost across the board. And now that I have access to the Refiner and Somnio, I can make my weapons stronger. So I have an extra stronger Liberation, and I'll be using that more later on. So basically I'm going to want to farm up as much iron, steel, and silver that I can, because I want all of my weapons to hopefully be +5. So as per usual, when we get forced units upon us, we have to just either let them die or just have them hope and pray they can survive by themselves. I just unequipped Alchrist and company so they don't accidentally end up helping. And now we have another one of our big issues in this run is going to pop up now. I'm just scattering these throughout in no particular order, just thought I'd bring this up now. This issue is going to be chain attacks. Chain attacks are attacks that happen when 2 enemies are next to each other. It's basically like a pair up from the older games. They'll do a little bit of damage to help, and the problem with that damage is it for some reason tends to always have an 80% accuracy no matter the situation. And so the problem with that is 4 damage over time on like getting surrounded by enemy units builds up, so I could be taking anywhere from 15 to 20 to 30 damage per turn depending on the situation, and there's nothing I can do about it. Whereas if it's just enemy versus enemy, I can rely on, you know, dodging, which would be a lot easier to deal with. So due to this reason, I really can't leave Alear in a vulnerable position, so I have to just hide on. Thankfully there's some heal tiles near the middle of the map here, so I just go on those, and I'm also going to be wanting to go on unbreakable tiles a lot because I don't want to get, broken by, considering there's a lot of Pegasus Knights in this chapter as well. It's not going to be that helpful. Thankfully though, despite these issues, this chapter is pretty easy, especially because all Hortensia has is Lucina, who is, it's not really a hot take, she's the worst emblem by far in this game. Okay, well, it's probably a tie between her and Leaf. They're both really trash. But anyway, thankfully, another decently easy chapter, and we move on to chapter 8. This is a fucking doozy of a chapter, boys and girls. This is a protect chapter, but we also have to defeat the boss chapter. So the goal here is to defeat Ivy while protecting an area. And it's not just like one individual spot, you have to just protect a line. You get access to Amber and Diamant this chapter, but they're, I don't want to use them, of course, for obvious reasons. So on my first attempt, I just decided to try, alright, let's just try and protect him and hope I can get into Ivy's range. Yeah, that doesn't work. One unit can't stop 80 from passing me because they're not focused on me, they're focused on getting to that area. So instead, I aim to just deal with Ivy as soon as possible. The problem with Ivy is that she's pretty scary. And also, this is not really a hot take, I don't think, but yeah, definitely best girl. Ivy is easily the best character, and I will die on this hill. Well, best actual character. Lynn is still the best. We all know that. So this is where I have to have a collective meeting in my head with the 3 brain cells that I have left, and I have to unlock like 80% of my brain for this chapter. So what I do is I equip Sigurd turn 1, and I engage immediately so I can get as close as humanly possible to Ivy in 1 turn. Now that includes using Override as well, because what I do is I override those 2 enemies on the left. That gives me a slight bit more room, and I canter over 2 spaces. And so that means by turn 3, I'm able to reach Ivy and take down one of her 2 HP bars with a silver sword. So on enemy phase, I go down to an insanely low 8 HP, and I do what any sane person would do in this situation. Yeah, no, I'm lying. I don't heal. I just decide, hey, fuck it, we ball. And I decide to override both Ivy and Kagetsu, hoping to pray to just RNGesus that I won't die. That's really all I'm hoping. I'm hoping on a wing and a prayer at this point. Next enemy phase happens, and I get so unbelievably fucking lucky. Ivy hits me with an 80 hit 9 damage attack, and I dodge it. I dodge it, an 80%er. That's why Ivy's so scary, is because she has such a high accuracy and also very high magic stats, so it's like the 2 worst things for me. And I only take 2 damage this turn from just an unlucky hit from Zelkov, which really doesn't matter. And on player phase, I'm able to take down Ivy, and I win. And I'm like, oh my god, I cannot believe I got this lucky. I did not deserve to get that W. But you know what? Fuck it, we take that. I definitely was feeling myself for a while, that's for sure. But anyway, we move on to Chapter 9, A Clash of Forces. While I'm in the process of coming down from that high, Chapter 9 isn't too bad. What I make sure I do before the chapter begins is I equip myself a nice little Levin sword. That Levin sword is going to be great because I'm now going to have access to 2 range. The problem with it is it's a magic based weapon and my magic stat is not that great. So that's a catch-22. It's the 2 range for the less damage. But it's going to be great against things like knights that are weak to magic and other such units. So be good against archers, other mages, you name it. Just nice to have that additional option available to me, basically. Rather have than not have. So kind of in the middle area, Jade is trying to hold out until we arrive and help her. Yeah. Sorry, Jade, but I'm letting you die. You sacrifice yourself for the cause, and that's okay. And while she's distracting some of the enemies, I make my way towards the southern path, and I hide on the fort that's kind of near where Zelkov is chilling. So I take care of Zelkov, I take care of Kagetsu, I just kind of hide out on that area for a little bit while I regain my health, and slowly but surely I move my way over to IV2 Electric Boogaloo. Now that's great having the same boss in 2 chapters back to back. Real great planning, guys. Intelligent Systems really knows what they're doing here. But, yeah, I get to see Mommy again, so, who cares? At least here, she's a lot easier to deal with. Because, 1, she doesn't have Leaf. And to be honest, that wouldn't have made any difference because Leaf is trash. At least here, she only has her tomes. Whereas in the last chapter, she had a lance. just kind of makes it easier for me to deal with a bit more damage. Because while the mages are really accurate, a lot of the tomes are not very good on speed, so they're not going to double you, and they're not going to do a terrible amount of damage to you. And also, I can take my time, unlike the last chapter. So I just attack her a few times, and then I just get her low enough that I can destroy her lodestar, as per everyone. And we move on to chapter 10, the Fell Dragon Sombrin. So this is a two-part chapter combined with chapter 11, so just be warned there that there's not going to be a break in between these two chapters. So keep that in mind while you're planning. So this chapter has two parts as well. There is a beginning section with Hortensia and then Hyacinth in the second section. So first, the Hortensia section is deceptively easy, and the reason I say that is because most of the enemies here, not that bad. Really nothing to pose a threat. However, once we actually get over to Hortensia herself, that's where the threat comes in. So Hortensia has a different ring this time. Unlike last time where she had Lucina, she now has the Byleth ring. And the Byleth ring gives her two abilities. It lets her dance for her allies, which really doesn't really matter too much to me. But the other problem is she gets access to one of Byleth's weapons, Lewin. Lewin is a lance that does an insane amount of damage, a lot more than I'm expecting it to do. Paired with Hortensia's pretty high hit, does not make for a fun time. She also has a freeze staff, so that prevents me from moving, which is also pretty annoying, which means I can't run if I need to. So I just need to keep that in mind while I'm making my moves. So Lewin does 33 damage with 50 hit, which realistically speaking, if this were a normal run, that's not that bad. I've probably seen worse, you know, you can heal up. However, this is our solo run where I'm expecting nothing to even get anywhere near remote 50 hit. And 33 damage is nothing to scoff at, considering I have 45 HP. That's over half my health in one hit. And pair that up with their 2 HP bars, and that's just a scary issue. So I decided to run to the southern pillar on that left side, and I hide there and vulnerate up my HP. At least the good thing here is she will not attack with Lewin every turn. She'll attack with Lewin every other turn. At least that's the pattern that I saw. So she'll either back up for one turn or hit you with something else. So that gave me enough time to just use all my vulneraries up, back up, and then eventually clear her out. And then I move on to the, I think they're about the same difficulty, the Morion and Hyacinth fight. So Morion is pretty easy here. The only annoying thing about him is he has a few key adept users that can chain guard, and chain guard prevents you from hitting both of your attacks, so that's pretty annoying, but that's really not too bad. Morion of course has 2 health bars, same thing with Hyacinth, but I'm able to bait Morion onto that healing tile in the south, and then I just take him out real quick. Problem here is Hyacinth. Hyacinth has Lyn, who in my humble opinion, and not very humble because I'm bragging about her, yeah, Lyn's the best in this entire game. She's easily the best emblem. I think there's a couple that can stand up to her, like Marth, maybe like Tiki, a few of the DLC ones, but Lyn is just really good. Her abilities are just out of this world. So what Hyacinth will do is he'll use Aster Storm, which doesn't do too much to me, but it's still gonna do 10 damage, so 2 times 5. And the other problem is here, he will use his ability to make doubles of himself, 4 of them. And the problem is when the enemy has Lyn, the doubles never fade. And so those doubles give Hyacinth 4 more attacks during chain attacks. So that's 4 times 4, so 16 damage per turn every time Hyacinth hits me. And doesn't even have to hit, he just attacks me. So thankfully here I do have Marth's Unyielding, and Unyielding recovers 20 HP if I am under 20 HP at the current moment. And that'll really help, paired with the heal tile that I'm hiding on. So that's going to be like 18 HP a turn. So what I do is I will attack Hyacinth very, very slowly on enemy phase with a Levin sword, just so I'm able to do at least a little bit of damage to him. And I just do this like very, very slowly over a long period of time. Thank God I have so many vulneraries. And I get him low enough that I can lodestar rush him, and I beat him. And the reason I don't go for the doubles is because 1, the doubles are so far away, and 2, I don't have an access to that healing tile. And the healing tile is what made or broke that chapter for me, because then Hyacinth would have had more of a chance to hit me. It would have gone from his like 11% chance to a 40% chance, and that's nothing I want to deal with. And that just didn't seem like a viable strategy for me at the time. So that's the reason. But anyway, let's go on to chapter 11, Retreat. So this is where we get very, very annoyingly, we get all of the emblem rings that we've had so far cucked from us. They get stolen, an important thing to mention before you even get into chapter 10 is to, hey, if you want to make sure you have all of the skills that you want from all of the emblem rings that we had so far. So that's slightly annoying. So basically at the beginning of this chapter, Alear's up shit creek without a paddle, without a single emblem to her name. So because she's flying full solo, I just decided to basically try and beeline for the bottom of the chapter, because that's the goal, is to just escape. So what Vale will do is she'll give rings to random enemies, and if you kill that enemy, the ring will just be given to someone else, so there's literally no point unless you want to try and farm experience. But it's not a very, very likely chapter to get much, because you're going to want to move, because all of those bosses, the 4 hounds up the top, and then other beasts and stuff that we really don't want to have to deal with quite this early are up there, so it's just best to just run. So eventually I run far enough that I'm able to trigger a mid-chapter useful situation. Ivy, Kagetsu, and Zelkov come to our rescue, and Ivy gives us the Lucina emblem. So I mean, alright, it's not exactly much, but it's an emblem. And Ivy comes along with the Lyn emblem, which, oh yes, I am very glad that we have that. Being, again, the nice person I am, I decide to sacrifice their asses so I can escape. You know, you might as well sacrifice yourself for the cause, be useful. I give off whatever weapons I can to the convoy, and then I'm just like, hey, have fun, stay on this tile, I'm gonna move. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. And I beat the chapter, and thank God, because that was annoying, scary. Those 2-part chapters are not fun, honestly. But anyway, after beating this, you get access to 2 paralogs, and this is where we're gonna kind of be introduced to the double rank system. So the max rank that you can have on any emblem is 10, but if you beat their paralogs, they're gonna be going up to 20, and you get access to better skills. So the problem with that is the paralog chapters are generally really, really difficult, and so I'm not in any shape or situation to deal with these yet. And so there's recommended levels on each one. For example, Lucina's is recommended level 19 base class, and Lyn is recommended level 1 advanced class. And that's just a recommended. You're going to want to be higher, especially if you're in the same situation I am. I'm way too weak for that shit. I'm glad that we have Lyn, because it's pretty much going to be the only emblem I use from now on, and she's completely amazing. I'll go into more of her abilities later on, but oh my god, she is such a great unit and such a great character and just such a great everything. I don't know if you could tell if I'm obsessed with Lyn or not. That definitely isn't a thing or anything. Next up, we move on to chapter 12, the Sentinels. Yay, we get to move on to desert areas now. God, I love the desert. Thankfully, unlike most Fire Emblem titles, the desert really isn't that much of a pain in the ass for us. So we get introduced to the Sentinels, who are part of Solm. They are Banette, Fogado, and Pandrea. They are really weird names, but they don't matter, because I just sent them to a corner to die. It's like, I'm not going to use them. I'm not going to rendezvous up with Alear, because right now Alear really does not need any of the items that those units have. You know, it's just easier that way. I don't even know how it works. I'm assuming that I lose at whatever they have equipped. But, hindsight's 2020. So at the beginning of this chapter, I decided to change class. I swapped to Thief here, and this was actually a big mistake. Oh, well, not big mistake, but this is like something I did that I misunderstood. And I'll go into that more later, but yeah. Now the main reason I decided to go into a Thief here is just for some stat boosts, because it'll give her more dex and speed, and also because I'm going to want access to pass. But again, that's later. So we also start using Lyn in this chapter, which is going to be very, very helpful, especially in this kind of a challenge run where we're doing a solo, because Lyn has 2 abilities, as we've kind of seen from Hyacinth. She has her Astral Storm and her Call Doubles. Calling Doubles will help with chain attacks against enemies by letting 4 of your clones hit 1 enemy with you, but for me that's really not why I want to use them. The main reason I want the doubles is because I can distract enemies with them, and with those enemies that don't have very good hit, I end up actually just killing the enemies with my doubles. Now if you kill with your double, you won't get that experience, which is unfortunate. However, I'd rather just get the kill than a small amount of experience. And of course we have Astral Storm, which really isn't going to be that helpful for me in this. It's going to be good for baiting enemies and dealing with annoying flyers, because it's really good against flyers. But besides that, it's not going to be too useful. Lyn has access to the Monikati and a few bows, and those bows are going to be pretty useful against the enemies, especially those flyers. However, The problem with bows, as we know from most Fire Emblem games, is they only have 2 range or above, no 1 range, unless you have a mini bow, which I don't even know if they exist in this game. But anyway, pretty easy chapter here. It's just a defeat all chapter. Just there are some villagers that you can save. However, I don't exactly have the logistical resources to save the villagers, so sorry guys, but you're gonna die. My bad. So in between chapters, I actually do give both Lucina's paralog and Lynn's paralog a try. I fail Lucina's, but surprisingly I'm able to deal with Lynn's paralog. Lynn's paralog isn't what I would consider difficult, it's just tedious and so damn time consuming. Long story short, I spend the entire map just running around trying to avoid Lynn, because Lynn is very, very scary and she does a shit ton of damage. And especially considering she has the same thing that Hyacinth had with their doubles, and I can't use Lynn this chapter, I have to use Lucina or no Emblem at all. Because when you do someone's paralog, you can't use the ring that you are doing the paralog of. So it's just a crap ton of archers, and I just have to keep running around. I basically use up my entire stack of vulneraries, and I just have to hide on bushes. At least the good thing is when I hide in the bushes, for some reason the enemies will not attack me. I guess it's because my avoid is low enough at that stage that they're just gonna ignore me. The only people that will attack me will be the few mages that are scattered throughout, who are very scary and deal like 30 damage per hit. So you get hit by one of those and you're fucked. So long story short, I just go around healing a bunch and I just hope and pray that I don't die. And that works, surprisingly. I go down to like 1 or 2 vulneraries. But the important thing about this is now we get access to level 20 bond with Lynn, which increases our speed and decreases the amount that we need for alacrity to work, however you pronounce that skill. Alacrity is the skill that lets you double your enemy before it's able to retaliate. So normally, you know, when you're attacking an enemy, you attack, they attack, you attack. This will basically mean you attack twice before they can attack once. And that'll be very, very useful preventing damage later on. So that's kind of why I wanted to get Lynn's done with as soon as I could, even though it was a little bit challenging, and honestly, I barely made it out alive. But now we were able to move on to 13 as we planned. We move on to chapter 13, Heroes of the Oasis. So this chapter, I swap over to warrior class. Alright, this is a misunderstanding I had fundamentally about this game. I thought, oh, you get a skill, you get to keep the skill. No, my dumbass realized that it's a class skill. You have to have it the whole time. So I swap over to warrior class now. Thank God I do this early. Because the reason I want to do it now is because I want some strength growths. Strength and defense growths. And also axes are pretty goated in this game. Unlike most games. So we get Marin, Panette, and Tamara in this chapter, aka we get another 3 death fodder units, so have fun dying. It's a Fog of War chapter, which, God, we know we all love. And there's a lot of villages that are unfortunately going to be pillaged and destroyed, and you know what, fuck it. We're just not good people in this run. I guess solo runs are kind of like, hey, fuck everyone except yourself. It should just be like a narcissism run. Narcissism percent. I like that idea. But yeah, I will not be able to reach those, no matter how hard I try. I'm not going to be able to reach those villages in time, because there's just so many enemies on this map. There's a crap ton of wyverns, which is not that bad. They're really not that bad. And there's just there's a bunch of archers, mages, and enemies I can't see because, you know, Fog of War and all that. Or Light of War. Yeah, we'll go with that. But anyway, so this chapter has another issue that kind of starts to prop up, and it's a good issue. It's weird. I don't know. I'm not gonna, yeah, I'm not gonna say no to this. So there's an AI issue. It's either an AI issue or the AI is just being smart. So if they don't have any chance to hit me, they will not even do anything. Which is great for me, because that means I won't get digged down by chain attacks. Because the real problem in this run is chain attacks. Even if the enemies can't do any damage to me, if there's multiple right next to each other, I'm gonna take damage whether I like it or not. Because that's just how chain attacks work. That's annoying. But thanks to that revelation, this chapter is just a breeze. There's 2 bosses, Techi and Tachi. Again, the sibling kind of, you know, your Maggie and Rose kind of vibe here. But yeah, they're vegetables. They're just actual vegetables. They literally do not do anything. They will only ever try and hit me if I'm actually hitting them on player phase. So I could hit, walk back, heal if I need to. There's literally no threat of dying. But god damn, longbows are so annoying. I realize how annoying these longbows are. They do like 15 hit with like 15 accuracy. And I can't fight back against them because 3 range is annoying. Even with Lynn's weapons available to her, I do not have the option of fight back unless I go through and I buy myself a longbow. I swap over to a archer class. It's like, that's not going to be very viable though, because archers are low. You know, in the long run, they're trash. Because what am I going to do on one range? Just sit there and take it? No, I'm not. I'm not a masochist like that, dude. Fuck no. But yeah, anyway, with that, I am going to call it here, guys. So we're going to split this up into 2 parts because it's a little bit longer than I was expecting. So on the next part, we will be tackling the rest of the run, and that'll go up whenever. But so far, so good. Honestly, this isn't too bad. This is a little bit of challenge. But also, there's been some easy chapters, some hard chapters. I mean, of course, we had that little incident at the beginning that we're just not going to talk about because, you know, it didn't happen. I mean, if any of y'all can figure out some way to magically do it without having anybody help you, by all means, like, please enlighten me. But I have absolutely zero clue what I'm doing in regards to that. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I've been Media Kaiser, and as always, peace!